In a quiet, dimly lit room, Nira, the alien, stretched out lazily on her bed, her silvery hair spilling over her shoulders. The panoramic window in her quarters framed the desolate, crimson-tinted landscape of Vega 9. The jagged mountain ranges looked like rows of sharp teeth against the violet sky, where two small moons began their slow ascent into the night. "So, what can you tell me about these Earth traditions?" Nira asked, adjusting her soft gray sleepwear. Her voice tinged with curiosity. Derek, the human commander, leaned casually against the doorway, his powerful frame still wrapped in heavy combat armor. It seemed to have molded to his body over their long assignment. Despite his battle-worn appearance, his face softened into a smile that made Nira's heart race unexpectedly. "Well, what do you want to know?" Derek's deep voice was laced with confidence, the kind that seemed inherent to humans, especially him. Nira raised an eyebrow, sitting cross-legged on her bed. "Your mating customs, they're quite odd. So many different positions and such strange names." Derek chuckled, running a hand through his short brown hair. "Yeah, we do get a bit creative with our terms," he admitted. Nira's eyes twinkled with innocent curiosity. "Such as, well, there's a missionary position, the cowgirl, the reverse cowgirl." Derek's voice trailed off as he noticed her amused expression. Nira burst into laughter, the sound like soft chimes. "And what's this doggy style you keep mentioning?" Derek paused and answered with a smirk. It's a position that mimics the mating posture of Earth's canines." Nira tilted her head. "Really? Is that so?" she asked, her expression shifting from amusement to curiosity. With an impish glint in his eyes, Derek grinned. "Want to see what it looks like?" Without hesitation, Nira dropped onto all fours, her silver hair spilling around her face like a cascading waterfall. She gazed up at him with wide, innocent eyes, her posture mirroring the description he had just given. Derek's breath hitched, his body stiffening. The sight of Nira in that position, her scarlet skin glowing against her gray pajamas, took him by surprise, making his armor feel tighter than ever. After a brief silence, Nira asked innocently, "Why would humans name a position after an animal?" Derek cleared his throat, his voice rougher than intended. "It's just because it looks like the way some animals mate. You know, like dogs." Nira's face flushed an even deeper shade of red, her eyes wide with realization. "Oh!" she whispered softly. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek rubbed the back of his neck, searching for something to say. "T," Nira blurted, breaking the tension. "Yeah, sure, that sounds good," Derek responded, grateful for the distraction. As Nira moved to prepare the alien equivalent of tea, a warm purple liquid that smelled of cinnamon and tasted of mint, Derek removed his gauntlets and set them down on the table. "So, how long have you been stationed here on Vega 9? Nira asked, her back to him as she worked, her delicate fingers stirring the tea. "About 3 months, Derek replied, watching the grace in her movements. "Feels longer, though. The isolation, the constant work. Surveying, reporting, defending against the native creatures." Nira nodded, her thoughts momentarily drifting to the strange creatures they had encountered. "The skrills, yes, they are persistent." "Persistent?" Derek laughed. "Bloodthirsty might be a better word." Nira brought over the steaming cups, her slender fingers brushing Derek's as she handed one to him. She felt a strange flutter in her chest again, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "You know," she said, sitting down opposite him, "your species is fascinating. So physically strong, yet emotionally complex." Derek raised an eyebrow. "And yours isn't?" "The Liens value logic and efficiency," Nira replied. "Emotions are secondary." Derek leaned forward, his gaze intense. "So is that why you're out here? To study human emotions up close?" Nira smiled, a playful glint in her eyes. "Perhaps. Or maybe I'm just a poor example of a Lien." Derek's eyes softened. "I think you're a perfect example of whatever you are." For a moment, they simply sat in silence, the weight of the compliment hanging between them. "Tomorrow's expedition should be tough," Derek finally said, breaking the tension. "We've seen increased skrill activity in the southern quadrant. I've updated the defense protocols." "Of course," Nira said, nodding. I've reinforced the perimeter sensors, too. Always thinking ahead, Derek said with admiration, that's why you're the best tech specialist we've got. And you're the best security commander. Nira replied, her smile playful. Even if your mating terminology is absurd. They both laughed. The vast dangers of Vega, 9 seeming far away in that moment. Outside, the purple sky darkened further. But inside, they were simply 2 beings enjoying each other's company. The southern quadrant of Vega, 9 was a desolate wasteland, filled with jagged rock formations and deep ravines. Derek led the small expedition team, his pulse rifle ready as they moved through the rough terrain. Nira followed closely, her scanner sweeping the area for any signs of Skrill activity. Readings are fluctuating, she reported, her brow furrowed. There's some interference. Derek raised a hand, signaling for the team to halt. Could be the mineral deposits, he said, just before a high-pitched screech sliced through the air, followed by another, and then dozens more. Skrill near the ravine, Derek shouted, immediately ordering the team into defensive formation. The Skrill emerged from the shadows like a flood of nightmares, 6-legged predators with gleaming exoskeletons that reflected the alien sun. Their mandibles clattered as they charged toward the team. Too many of them. Corporal Hayes yelled, his rifle blasting bolts of blue energy into the horde. Fall back to the transport. Derek barked, Hayes, Rodriguez, cover our retreat. Nira felt Derek grab her arm, pulling her away from the chaos. There's a cave system to the east. We can lose them there and circle back to the transport, he said urgently, firing behind them as they ran. The thunderous screeches of the Skrill echoed off the rock walls as they reached the cave entrance just as the sky darkened with the incoming storm. Nira's lips curled into a small smile as she spoke. I believe this is just the beginning. When they reached the command center, they found Captain Varon standing in front of a large holographic display. 2 ships were making their way toward Vega 9. Commander, Varon acknowledged with a nod. What's the situation? Derek asked, saluting. Varon's normally calm demeanor seemed more tense than usual. We have visitors, he said, his voice grim. An Earth research vessel and a Lien diplomatic cruiser, both requesting immediate docking clearance. Odd timing, Derek remarked, a furrow crossing his brow. Indeed, Varon replied, his eyes flickering between Derek and Nira, especially since both are requesting to speak with you too. Nira's face remained unreadable, but Derek could sense the tension radiating from her. Did they specify their purpose? The Earth vessel claims it a routine scientific mission, Varon said, his tone skeptical. The Lien cruiser has been more evasive, but I find it strange that both ships arrived just hours after Dr. Sorensen's report was transmitted. Derek's gaze met Nira's, and they exchanged a silent understanding. Their private matters had just become public knowledge far quicker than they had expected. Permission to prepare for the delegation, sir? Derek asked, his voice firm. Granted. Varon responded, then added quietly, and Commander, whatever has happened between you two, I suggest you get your story straight before they dock. As they left the command center, Nira's usually steady hand trembled slightly in Derek's grasp. It will be fine, he reassured her, though his voice carried an uncertain edge. How can you be so sure? She asked. Derek flashed her a confident smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. Because humans are stubborn like that. We'll make it work, even when it seems impossible. Nira wished she could share his optimism, but as the distant ships grew larger on Vega 9's monitors, she couldn't shake the growing tension. The docking procedures for both vessels were nearly complete, when suddenly, the alarms blared through the station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors as Derek and Nira sprinted toward the command center. Status report. Derek barked as they burst into the room. Captain Varon stood at the central console, his face grim. Massive Skrill swarm approaching from the southern quadrant. This is the largest one we've ever recorded. The main screen displayed a chaotic mass of creatures moving across the barren landscape toward the station. Their numbers were overwhelming. Thousands of Skrill instead of the usual dozens. The storm must have disturbed their nests, Nira suggested, moving swiftly to her station to analyze the data. Or they've evolved, she added under her breath. Either way, our usual defenses won't be enough to stop them, Varon said. Derek studied the tactical display. What about the ships that just arrived? Can they assist? The Earth vessel is mostly scientific, minimal weapons. Varon replied. The Lien cruiser has decent firepower, but they're refusing to engage, claiming it's not their conflict. Derek's jaw tightened. Permission to speak with the Lien commander? Make it quick, Varon nodded. The swarm will reach us in 20 minutes. The communication screen flickered on, and the stern face of Commander Sarn appeared. His silver hair was neatly cropped, a sign of his military discipline. His scarlet skin was darkened by the years, a testament to his experience. Commander Travis, Specialist Nira. He greeted coldly. I understand your station is facing a predicament. Yes, Commander Sarn, Derek replied, maintaining his composure. We could use your help. Your cruiser's weapon systems could make the difference between survival and annihilation. Sarn's face remained impassive. The Lien Directorate does not involve itself in local planetary conflicts. We are here on diplomatic business, regarding Specialist Nira and the reports we've received. Derek felt his temper flare, but kept his frustration in check. With all due respect, Commander, if the station falls, there won't be any diplomatic talks to hold. Nira will be dead along with everyone else. At the mention of Nira's fate, a fleeting expression, perhaps concern, flashed across Sarn's features. But before he could respond, Nira stepped into view beside Derek. Commander Sarn, she began, her voice steady and firm, I request permission to address you directly. Sarn inclined his head slightly, granting her the floor. The humans of Vega 9 have defended this outpost against indigenous threats for 3 years, Nira continued. They've displayed remarkable courage, ingenuity, and determination. Commander Travis, in particular, has shown tactical brilliance that would impress even the Lien War College. Derek glanced at her, surprised by her passionate defense. Sarn dismissed her words with a wave. These qualities you speak of are merely survival instincts. Primitive but effective. Nira didn't flinch. With respect, Commander, I have observed humans extensively. Their capabilities go far beyond survival. They possess a unique blend of logical reasoning and emotional intuition, which allows them to solve problems in ways the Lien would never consider. Sarn's eyes narrowed. Your admiration for these humans seems excessive, Specialist. It is based on empirical evidence, Nira replied, her voice unwavering. Today, you have the opportunity to witness it firsthand. Join us in defending Vega 9 and judge human capabilities for yourself. The silence stretched as Sarn considered her words. Finally, he gave a curt nod. Very well. The Lien cruiser will provide defensive support. I will personally lead a contingent to observe these human tactics. As the communication ended, Derek turned to Nira, a newfound respect in his eyes. That was brilliant. It was logical, she replied with a small smile. Liens respect evidence above all else. Now you must provide it. Varon approached them. The Earth vessel is deploying its security team. Not much, but every weapon helps. We'll need to coordinate both forces. Agreed, Derek said, slipping into command mode. Nira, can you interface our tactical systems with the Lien cruiser? Already on it, Nira confirmed, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. Derek felt a strange awareness of Nira's presence as they prepared for battle. The thought of losing her, either to the Skrill or the disapproval of the Lien Directorate, only fueled his determination. When Commander Sarn and his team arrived at the defense center, Derek was ready. He had devised a strategy that combined Lien precision with human adaptability, a plan that would showcase the best of both species. Commander Sarn, Derek greeted, extending his hand in the human gesture of respect. Sarn eyed the offered hand with mild distaste, but eventually shook it briefly. Your tactical officer speaks highly of your abilities, Commander Travis. I look forward to an objective assessment. You'll get one, Derek replied confidently. I've integrated your forces into our defense plan. Your soldiers will provide precision fire from the upper levels, while my teams will handle mobile defense on the ground. Sarn studied the tactical display. An unorthodox approach. Lien doctrine would suggest concentrated firepower at key choke points. It would work if the Skrill attacked in conventional way, Derek explained. But they adapt. They'll find ways around static defenses. Sarn murmured, fascinating, though it was unclear if he meant the Skrill or Derek's strategy. As the final preparations were made, Nira approached Derek in a rare moment of privacy. Be careful out there, she said softly. Commander Sarn will be watching your every move. Let him watch, Derek replied with a confident smile. I've got something to prove now. What's that? Nira asked. Derek's eyes met hers, intense and determined. That humans are worthy of the Lien respect. That I'm worthy of you. Before Nira could respond, Derek leaned in and kissed her, a brief but passionate gesture that left no doubt about his feelings. When they pulled apart, Nira's expression was filled with pride, not embarrassment. Let them see, she whispered. Let them all see. I see them. Derek's voice crackled over the comms, tension evident in his tone. Bigger, smarter, and they're coordinating the smaller ones. The situation was deteriorating quickly as the new Alpha Skrill directed the rest of the Horde toward weak points in the defense. One section of the perimeter collapsed entirely, forcing a hasty retreat. Commander Sarn, we need your team at Junction 7 immediately. Derek called out over the comm, we have to seal that breach before they breach the life support systems. Sarn hesitated briefly before his voice came through, cold and precise. Acknowledged, moving to assist. Nira watched as the Lien commander led his elite squad into the fray, his blue marker joining Derek's red one as they synchronized their movements on the tactical map. For a moment, it seemed like the tide might turn. The combined human and Lien forces managed to push the Skrill back from the critical systems. But then disaster struck. An explosion rattled the station as a cluster of Skrill detonated some kind of biological charge against the outer hull. Alarms blared as the integrity of several sections was compromised. The chaos in the command center escalated as they scrambled to assess the damage. Commander Sarn, behind you. Derek's voice rang out again, frantic. The video feed showed the terrible truth. 3 Alpha Skrill had burst through a damaged wall directly behind Commander Sarn. Without hesitation, Derek lunged forward, tackling Sarn out of the way as the creatures pounced. The feed fizzled into static as the sound of weapons fire and screeching Skrill drowned out everything else. When the transmission finally cleared, Nira's heart stopped. Derek lay motionless on the ground, his armor torn open across his chest and abdomen. Dark blood pooled beneath him. Commander Sarn and his guards were dispatching the remaining Skrill, but Derek wasn't moving. Medical team to Junction 7 now, Nira shouted, already sprinting for the door. Specialist, you're needed here. Captain Varon called after her, but she didn't stop. She ran to the corridors, her heart pounding, desperate to reach the man she loved. When Nira arrived at the scene, the medical team was already working on Derek. His face was ashen, his breathing shallow. Commander Sarn stood nearby, his uniform spattered with both Skrill and human blood. How bad? Nira demanded, pushing past the Lien guards. Dr. Parsons looked up from where he was applying emergency sealant to Derek's wounds. Multiple lacerations. Possible internal bleeding. We need to get him to medical immediately. As they carefully lifted Derek onto a stretcher, his eyes fluttered open. He weakly reached for her hand. Derek, Nira whispered, her voice cracking. Don't speak. Just stay with me. He squeezed her hand faintly before slipping back into unconsciousness. Later, in the medical bay, Nira paced outside the surgical unit, unable to calm her racing thoughts. Inside, Dr. Parsons and his team fought to save Derek's life. Commander Sarn stood across from her, his usual stoic expression showing subtle signs of change. He saved my life, Sarn said finally, breaking the silence. Nira stopped pacing, her gaze locking with his. That's who he is. That's who humans are at their core. Sarn considered her words, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Perhaps, he said quietly, or perhaps it is simply who this particular human is. He stepped closer, his gaze more intense. You care deeply for him. It wasn't a question, but Nira answered anyway. Yes, against all Yen teachings. against our biological imperative to preserve our own lineage, against logic itself. She paused, her voice growing softer. And yet, it feels more right than anything I've ever known. Sarn remained silent for a long moment, before speaking again, his tone shifting. The Directorate sent me here to retrieve you, to end this inappropriate liaison and return you to Lien for reconditioning. Nira stiffened. And now, Sarn looked at her with a certain heaviness in his ancient eyes. Now, I have witnessed something that our philosophers and scientists have long debated, whether humans possess true nobility of spirit or merely a crude imitation of it. He gestured toward the surgical unit. Commander Travis answered that question when he placed himself between danger and a Lien. He had no obligation to protect. Before Nira could respond, Dr. Parsons emerged from the surgery, looking weary but relieved. He'll live, the doctor announced. The wounds were severe, but his enhanced physiology helped. He'll need time to recover, but there should be no permanent damage. A wave of relief flooded over Nira, so intense that she had to steady herself against the wall. Can I see him briefly? She asked, her voice soft. Dr. Parsons nodded. He's still sedated, but he should regain consciousness soon. Inside the recovery room, Derek lay still, hooked up to medical equipment, his powerful body now vulnerable beneath bandages. Nira sat beside him, taking his hand in hers, marveling at how their different anatomies, his 5 fingers to her 4, could fit together so perfectly. I never taught you the most important human custom, she whispered to his sleeping form. Humans say, I love you, when they feel like I do now. So, Derek Travis, I love you. Please come back to me. To her surprise, his fingers twitched in hers. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her face with effort. Nira, he murmured, his voice hoarse. Are you okay? I'm fine. The station's secure, she reassured him, squeezing his hand. The skrill had been repelled. You should be resting, not worrying. A weak smile crossed his lips. Can't help it. It's a human thing. One of many human things I've come to appreciate, she replied, leaning closer. Including Doggy style, he whispered, a hint of mischief in his voice. Despite everything, Nira laughed, the sound light in the sterile room. Especially that, she said, though I believe there are many more human customs I have yet to learn. I'll teach you, Derek promised, his eyes growing heavy again as the medication pulled him back toward sleep. All of them. As Derek drifted off, Nira became aware of Commander Sarn standing in the doorway. His expression had softened, something like understanding in his ancient eyes. The Directorate will not approve, Sarn said quietly. Nira straightened her shoulders. Then perhaps it's time for the Directorate to evolve, as all successful species must. Sarn's mouth twitched, perhaps the beginning of a smile. Perhaps it is. Come, Specialist. We have much to discuss while Commander Travis recovers. There may be a path forward that neither of our species has considered before. With one last look at Derek, still asleep in the bed, Nira followed Sarn out of the room, hope blooming in her chest for the first time since the ships had arrived. 2 weeks later, after the Skrill attack, Vega, 9 had returned to normal operations. The damaged sections had been repaired, the fallen honored, and the station's defenses reinforced against any future incursions. But for Derek and Nira, everything had changed. Derek stood before the mirror in his quarters, adjusting the formal dress uniform. It felt stiff and unfamiliar after months in combat armor. His wounds had healed remarkably well, another benefit of his enhanced physiology, though occasional twinges reminded him of his close call. A knock at the door preceded Captain Varon's entrance. Almost ready, Commander? Varon asked, his usual gruff demeanor softened by the occasion. As ready as I'll ever be, Derek replied, tugging at his collar. Still not sure how Commander Sarn pulled this off. Varon smiled, a rare sight. Never underestimate the power of a life debt. In most cultures, saving someone's life earns you certain privileges. I wasn't thinking about privileges when I tackled him, Derek said with a chuckle. Just didn't want to see him gutted by those things. And that's precisely why his proposal gained traction, Varon noted. Your actions embodied the best of humanity, selflessness, courage, quick thinking. You made us all look good. If I'd known saving a Lien commander would lead to interspecies diplomatic history, I might have been more nervous, Derek admitted with a laugh. It's too late for nerves now, Varon replied, checking his timepiece. The ceremony begins in 30 minutes. Both delegations are assembled on the observation deck. As Varon left, Derek took a final look at himself in the mirror. Today, he and Nero will become the first officially recognized human-Lien bonded pair under a new diplomatic initiative, a pilot program Sarn had called it, Studying Cross-Species Cooperation in its most intimate form. The political implications were enormous, but the personal ones, even more so. Derek hadn't seen Nero since the previous evening. Lien tradition required bonding partners to spend the night before the ceremony in contemplation, though Derek suspected Sarn had added this requirement to give the delegates time to make final preparations, or perhaps to give Nero one last chance to reconsider. But he knew she wouldn't, not as Nero. They exchanged vows in each other's languages, Derek's Lien pronunciation drawing appreciative murmurs from both delegations. Together, they participated in the symbolic binding of their hands with a cord woven from materials from both worlds. When Commander Sarn officially pronounced them bonded under the new interspecies diplomatic relations protocol, the human delegation erupted in applause. Meanwhile, the Lien delegation performed their traditional acknowledgement gesture, a synchronized bow that Derek had spent days practicing with Nero. Now comes the human tradition I've been looking forward to, Nero whispered, her eyes gleaming as the formal part of the ceremony concluded. Which one? Derek asked, amused. The kissing part, she replied with a playful smile. Their kiss was modest by human standards, but scandalous by Lien ones, a perfect reflection of the new ground they were breaking together. The reception that followed was a perfect blend of both cultures, human music intertwined with Lien harmonic compositions, and food from both worlds, each dish labeled with helpful indicators on which species could safely consume them. As the evening progressed, Derek found a quiet moment with Commander Sarn. I never properly thanked you for making this possible, he said, his voice sincere. Sarn inclined his head slightly. His usual stoic demeanor softened. It was logical. Our species have much to learn from each other. This experiment provides a structured framework for such exchanges. Is that all it is to you? Derek pressed. An experiment? Sarn's expression softened almost imperceptibly. It is also the repayment of a debt, he replied, pausing as though weighing his words. And perhaps it is also the recognition that some traditions deserve to be challenged. Before Derek could respond, Nero appeared at his side, slipping her hand into his. The Earth delegation is requesting a demonstration of human dancing, she informed him. Apparently, they've been told about something called a first dance. Derek groaned good-naturedly. I warned you about dancing in this uniform. I'm a quick study, Nero reminded him with a smile. On the makeshift dance floor, Derek took Nero in his arms, guiding her through a simple waltz as the other guests watched with varying degrees of curiosity and approval. So, he said quietly as they moved together, how does it feel to be a diplomatic pioneer? Surprisingly natural, Nero replied, her voice light, though her eyes sparkled with mischief, though I'm still not entirely clear on all my new responsibilities. Well, Derek said with a grin, as I understand it, we're supposed to document our experiences, cultural exchanges, day-to-day interactions, challenges, and successes of interspecies cohabitation. Nero's eyes sparkled. All our experiences? Maybe not all, Derek chuckled. Some things can remain private. Speaking of private, Nero murmured, I've been researching more human customs. Did you know there's something called a honeymoon? I might have heard of it, Derek replied, grinning. I find the concept intriguing. Extended privacy for new bondmates to strengthen their connection. Very diplomatic phrasing, Nero teased, and Derek laughed. I've arranged something along those lines, he said. Captain Varon has granted us 2 weeks of leave. There's a research outpost on the southern continent with spectacular views, and more importantly, no diplomatic delegations. Perfect, Nero sighed, resting her head against his chest as they continued to dance. Though I hope there's a comfortable bed. The best that interspecies diplomacy could arrange, Derek promised. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, they made their way to Derek's quarters, now officially their shared living space under the protocol. The room had been expanded and modified to accommodate both human and Lien needs, another symbol of their new shared existence. As the door closed behind them, Nira turned to Derek with a smile full of desire. "So, Commander Travis," she said, working at the fastenings of his formal uniform, "now that we're officially diplomatic partners, maybe you could refresh my memory about certain human customs." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Any particular custom you're interested in?" Nira smiled, backing toward their bed, her silver robe shimmering. "Well," she said, dropping to all fours on the mattress and looking over her shoulder, "I believe it started with something about Doggy style." Derek laughed. "I'd be happy to provide a thorough demonstration. For diplomatic purposes, of course." "Of course," Nira agreed, her eyes dancing. The future of interspecies relations depends on it. As they came together, the vastness of space outside seemed less intimidating. They had defied traditions and created something new, all starting from a cultural misunderstanding in a simple phrase: Doggy style. The honeymoon, the research outpost on Vega 9's southern continent, was a stunning blend of glass and metal, perched on the edge of a vast canyon. The sunsets bathed the building in a romantic glow, creating a perfect atmosphere for Derek and Nira. After a week of honeymoon bliss, they had settled into a comfortable rhythm, free from the pressure of diplomacy. "This view never gets old," Derek said, gazing out at the canyon, the twin moons rising over the landscape. Nira joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Neither does this one," she murmured, pressing a kiss between his shoulder blades. Derek turned to her, admiring her in his oversized T-shirt. "Just thinking about how lucky I am," he said. "Of all the outposts, you walked into mine. Is that a human cultural reference?" Nira asked with a smile. "Something like that." Derek chuckled. "I'll add it to your education list." Nira's playful glint returned. "We still have some cultural exchanges to document for our official report." "Really?" Derek raised an eyebrow. "I've been reviewing our initial misunderstanding for scientific purposes," Nira said, teasing him as she backed toward their bed. "Of course," Derek agreed with a grin. "Very thorough of you. Further study is warranted," she continued, leading him toward their bed, "to ensure complete cross-cultural understanding." Derek followed, drawn by her teasing eyes. "As a representative of Earth, I feel obligated to assist." Nira laughed, her voice music in the quiet room. "Your dedication to diplomacy is admirable, Commander." Later, as they lay together, Nira traced patterns on Derek's chest. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The future," she replied softly. "When our honeymoon ends, we return to being the focus of two civilizations' expectations." "It won't be easy," Derek agreed. "We'll be scrutinized, studied, probably criticized." "Does that worry you?" Nira asked. "Not as much as it should," he said with a smile. "We've faced worse." Nira's expression softened. "Humans truly are remarkable." Derek chuckled. "It's not confidence. It's stubbornness. We don't give up easily." "And I'm worth fighting for?" Nira asked, her voice vulnerable. Derek cupped her face in his hands. "You're worth crossing galaxies for, defying traditions for, and yes, fighting for." Nira kissed him, her smile soft. "I feel the same about you." Derek pulled her closer. "I would have followed you to Lien, scandalized my entire home world if necessary." Nira teased him. "Absolutely." Derek grinned. "I'd have introduced all sorts of inappropriate human customs." "Exactly like Doggy style," she replied innocently. They burst into laughter. As it faded, Nira settled against Derek's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you think there are others like us?" she asked. "Probably." Derek nodded. "We're just the first to make it official." "Pioneers," Nira murmured. "Trailblazers," Derek agreed, opening the door for others to follow. Outside their window, Vega 9's alien landscape stretched into the distance. The planet that once seemed inhospitable had become the birthplace of something new, a bridge between worlds, built on understanding, respect, and love. Whatever comes next, Nira said softly, we face it together. Together, Derek echoed, sealing the promise with a kiss. And as the twin moons of Vega 9 climbed higher in the night sky, the human and the Lien drifted asleep in each other's arms. Pioneers a new frontier.